welcome everyone. My name is Hector. I was captain of the UNM team that went off to compete in the RMCCDC 2013 competition, and this is our recap. Thanks. The recap, we're going to go over a few things about RMCCDC and our experiences there. We'll talk a little bit about what is RMCCDC, some of the systems we encountered at the competition, some of the hardware we encountered, the Injects, what are they, the documents and tasks that were handed out to us during the competition, some of the, what type of attacks that we encountered, as well as how we were scored, how each team was scored using the scoring engine. By the way, the scoring engine is the same scoring engine that they use at the national competition. The strategy that we had planned and what we eventually ended up using, and some of our results and some lessons learned from the competition. So what is RMCCDC? It stands for Rocky Mountain Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, and it's the regional competition of the national cyber defense competition. 8 teams are invited, or 8 teams can register to compete at this competition. And it's a 2-day competition where we go in as a replacement security operations team at a fictitious company that is under attack by hackers. The various teams came from several regions, including Kansas, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, Colorado, and the U.S. Air Force Academy. There are various rules to the competition. For example, some of the ones I'll talk about are the ones that we're supposed to follow before the competition. In other words, what can we do before the competition and what can we do at the competition? For example, we can take in printed materials. So for any teams that's planning to compete, you may want to think about doing your research, printing out whatever you need to print out, taking any books that you're interested in that you might think might be useful. So you can take those printed materials in. What you can't take in is any digital copies of the materials that you're thinking of taking in. You can't take any thumb drives in with you. You can't pre-prep, which means that you can't put anything up on the web before the competition. So if you're thinking of maybe uploading materials to Google Docs, for example, that's not permitted. You're not permitted to register any free application to download ahead of time. You may be allowed to do it there, but you can't do it before the competition. You can't bring any cell phones, no type of cell phones into the competition room, no soft drinks, no snacks. We're kind of worried about that because some of us get thirsty throughout the day, but they supply a lot of that for you. They'll supply snacks, they'll supply water, they'll supply coffee and juice, but they won't allow you to bring your own stuff in. Finally, it's a good idea to bring in some notepads, pens, papers, sticky pads, and tape. Tape was very useful for us. Other than that, just go in and enjoy yourself. There's more rules that you can look up at the regional site at http://academic.regis.edu/CIAS/RMCCDC. Thanks. And Colin will now talk about the systems we encountered and some of the hardware that we got to use there. Thanks.
All right, I'm Colin. I'm going to talk about the hardware and the software we encountered at the CCDC. We were given 4 Dell notebooks. 2 of them were older, and we got to keep those 2. No, 2 of them were newer, and we got to keep those 2. And then 2 of them were older models. They all worked just fine, though. We also had a MacBook, which Bryce enjoyed using. We were given a Raspberry Pi Model B, the 512 meg version of it, so the newer one. There was a Cisco Catalyst 2900 switch that we were in charge of, and a rather high-end Lexmark printer. It was a color laser printer. And then we had a 16 gig USB thumb drive. So the systems that we were running had a very wide variety of software on them. The 2 Linux systems were, all 3 of our Linux servers were running CentOS, and then the Raspberry Pi had a version of Debian on it. The MacBook was running Mac OS X 10.8. All of the Windows laptops were running Windows 7. We had two different versions of Windows Server, 2008 R2 and 2003 on the different Windows servers. We had two copies of MySQL installed, one running on the website and one as a backup server on two of the Linux machines. The website was running on Apache. We had VMware vSphere access to control all of the virtual machines. In addition, we had access to 3 Cisco devices, the switch that we actually had hardware access to. We had the router, which we were just given Telnet and SSH access to, and the Cisco ASA firewall, which again was somewhere else, and we just had virtual access to it. And then we had to keep a mail server running, which was running Windows Exchange Server. And that's about it. I'm going to pass it off to Ruth for Injects now.
Okay, I'm Ruth Krekowitz, and I'm going to be talking about our Injects. So basically throughout the whole competition, throughout the day, we'd be given Injects, which had to be completed in a certain amount of time. Some of them had to be completed by the end of the day, maybe the next day, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Basically, these Injects consisted of writing policies, doing risk assessments. We even had an Inject where we had to do a PowerPoint. Some of them also revolved around legal issues. So one thing to consider that I think for everybody when we were doing Injects that was kind of like helpful, even though we had a couple people that were mainly in charge of our Injects, we had made a template for people to kind of follow to have an idea of how to help us out with the Injects, everybody that did. Also, in terms of our documentation, we also had chain logs. We also had a bunch of password sheets that everybody had where we kept track of all the passwords we changed and what computer, so we could keep track of that as well. And just one thing to keep in mind with the Injects is that you're using a lot of the knowledge that you've already gained here at Anderson. So just try to make them clear, concise, to the point, and also you can do a little research. You don't have to know everything, but just to have an idea of how you're going to do everything. Okay, so next is Hazy, and he will be talking about the attacks that we encountered. Yay!
Hi everybody, my name is Haley Shannon, and some of the attacks that we encountered during the competition kind of range from things like service interruptions to other things like they took over our printer and used exploits to get into some of our client machines. But basically for the service interruptions, what they did, basically they just did little things to kind of screw everything up. And while we were in the competition, basically taking down our printer or just doing little things like sending us books to print for our printer. And for the client infiltration, what they did was they used the exploits to take advantage of some of the vulnerabilities on the machines. And when they got into the clients we had, they basically wreaked havoc, basically doing things like removing the start menu so we can't restart and disabling the administrator account. And then next, for the DOS attacks, denial of service attacks, what basically happened was they just sent endless requests to our servers, and that basically really slowed them down to the point where they were practically useless or just shut them down completely, which obviously affected us and our customers. And next, another thing they did was they deleted the database. I'm not exactly sure how they could have did it, maybe through an inject, or maybe they hacked into our database server and deleted it that way, but we were able to bring it back because we had backups. And then next, probably the biggest issue we had was with the printer. We had a really hard time getting it going at first, and when we finally got it running, we didn't put any type of passwords or user things on it, so we didn't really think they would get into that, but then we started noticing little things like they changed the LCD screen to a little kitten, and later to the New Mexico Aggies, and then they started doing more annoying things like trying to print entire books and hundreds of pictures of Honey Boo Boo and stuff like that. And we eventually fixed it by adding a username and a password and doing a few factory resets. And then lastly, with exploits, the issue with the exploits is that we have to update the computers. When we got the computers, they were all outdated, needed a ton of Windows updates, and a lot of the programs on the clients were probably really outdated, and that's one way exploits can be used to get into systems, is because those programs probably have security loopholes and things like that. And next I'll hand it over to Melissa with scoring.
Alright, so I am Melissa, and I'm going to talk about the scoring engine and how they scored us. So this basically is a picture of something we weren't able to see during the competition at all. We got this after the fact. So they scored us on a few different parameters, basically how long or how consistent we were able to keep our services running, and then how well we did on our business injects. Here you can see we are teammate at the top, and so they just had different tabs and kind of to the top of the different score parts that they had. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what it is. And so here's a picture of our services. So our team, we were able to see just the services that we had up. We weren't able to see the other teams. But so basically, like, it lays all the services out here across the top, and if it's up, it's green. If it's down, it's red. And so we just kind of monitored this throughout the competition, and so that's how we knew what we were doing and how well we were doing. And so this is just kind of another breakdown of the points. So basically, if you had all your injects in, you got points for them, and if you were late on them, you would lose points, and if you had your services running, you would be consistent. You would consistently gain points, but then as long as they were down, you would lose points for that time. So here you can kind of see, you know, Team 6 is doing well and Team 7 is not doing very well. And this is just another picture of the rankings, and just kind of shows like how they did specifically on their injects and their services and the team name. And this, okay, so here, this is the Injects rankings, and it's basically, it lays out like how, okay, just kidding, this is the services. This is the services ranking. And so you can see they have a column for services up and then services down, and then total points, and so it just kind of like says how many services they have running, each team has running at the time, and what services they have down. Okay, and that does it for the scoring engine, and now Kat will talk to you guys about our plan strategy that we had.
I'm Kat, and I'm going to talk about the strategy we used. Most of it was before we went in. We split up the team by technical areas. Each of us had like a main area to focus on, and then we had a backup. Like we had call in on Linux and a backup person for Linux and everything like that, so that if someone was busy, there was someone else to help. And we were all split in areas, so we weren't overwhelming ourselves with having to learn like 10 different things. We each learned 3 or 4 things, which helped a lot. And then we also had, before the competition, we made an Excel sheet with our first hour tasks. So when we went in there, all of us would know what we were going to do. First, we had like the first 3 or 4 tasks, like going in, and these 2 people would change all the passwords, and like Bryce would do the firewall and all that, and that really helped us stay focused and stick to our plan. And a lot of the stuff too, we focused on strong password protection. We had like 210 passwords or something pre-printed out, 20 character passwords with numbers, letters, symbols, uppercase, lowercase, and that helped us. We didn't have to spend time making passwords when we were already there, and we had a sheet that you put the machine name and what it was used for, whatever, so we knew what these passwords went to. We also locked down our firewall pretty well, but in the beginning we did have an issue where we had a global allow rule, but we caught that, and that's a really important thing to know, so focus on that. And then we just continuously monitored our injects and responses. That's probably like half your points right there. And we had a plan. We had Ruth designated to go in there and really focus on those injects. So even though we had a strategy, we did have a lot of unexpected things when we got there. Like, we didn't realize we weren't going to have enough computers for everyone. We had a Raspberry Pi, which I'm not sure any of us here even knew what it was beforehand. And also we went in and nothing was connected. The Ethernet cables weren't plugged in, the chargers weren't plugged in, the machines were all turned off. So that kind of threw us off a little bit, but it didn't take that long to get up and running. We had the printer vulnerability, which we all kind of just overlooked and didn't think about it, and that's something that we should do better next year. Also, we weren't prepared to use vSphere. We spent several hours trying to figure out how to change the password on it and never could do that. Not sure if that was important, but that should definitely be looked into for next year. And also, we didn't know that we were going to be getting phone calls at all, so when the phone first rang, we were really confused. But that was actually a really critical element to the competition. And we got there, they informed us, it was the first time we heard about it, that we were going to have digital injects. We thought they were all going to be brought to us by paper, and that was something we had to log into our team site right away to get those. And then just you have to make sure anyone entering the room is not the red team. All the white team members were constantly switching in and out, so we didn't know who was who, and that was something you kind of had to look out for. And next is Bryce with the results.
And in terms of the global allow rule, that wasn't really my fault. YouTube's fault, was it? Okay. All right, my name is Bryce Montano, and I'm going to be covering results. I was the in-house Cisco IT expert. So I guess I didn't even need to say that, but UNM scored highest overall in terms of points. The two areas where we took first place were maintaining our services, so basically keeping up all the services that we had to, as well as we had the least amount of SLA violations. And then I guess in two other categories we didn't do so great. I know that in the business injects we did probably got about 5th place. And then in one other category they docked us like a $5,000 penalty because we had too many non-competitive members. So bringing us to our next point, non-competitors. We obviously couldn't advance to the national competition. Reason being that we had 6 or 7 graduate students and 1 undergraduate student. So in terms of our performance, after we had kind of wrapped up the day, the gold team and I guess some of the event organizers came in and talked to us. They congratulated us with how well we did, saying that they were very impressed with how we did, and that I don't think they expected us to do as well as we did. We kind of talked about what we did right in the competition in terms of getting injects in a timely manner. I think we only missed 2, which we contested. We missed 2. They said that we had nice passwords and good business and writing skills, so go figure. And then good social dynamics, I guess, interacting appropriately with each other, good communication, not yelling at each other, and getting into fights with the red team. So, next is Kenneth Potter with lessons learned and recommendations.
My name is Ken Potter, and I'm going to talk about lessons learned and recommendations. One first obstacle we encountered was there weren't enough machines to go around. We had 6 machines and 8 students. What can we do about that? I don't know, check in advance, find out what your resources are. Not all work is technical. You need to have good writing skills, as well as the technical skills to succeed. Keep cool and collected. The first day was pretty high stress. We did well with it. But the second day, after we were a little more familiar with how things go, it was a little calmer, a little easier to handle. The red team's definitely going to get in, but just keep working and kick them right back out. So your goal is to maintain services as much as possible and keep up with your injects. One thing that we had to address was a vulnerability with our printer. That was actually we sunk a lot of time into that. So I'd recommend, addressing that right off. Peripherals are important also. Okay, so in advance of the competition, there's a lot of information available. You should take the time to read and evaluate that information. This year was the first time that the Injects were available digitally, and the first day Injects were actually available in advance. So looking at those will give you some idea of what to expect. Keep track of your time. The Injects have due dates. Some come up faster than others, and there's a lot going on. So you kind of have to keep tabs on that. We had some good customer calls. I think we weren't quite expecting those. We were expecting. We thought initially maybe we were being harassed by the red team, but in fact it was a customer call. It's part of the competition to deal well with your customers, so be prepared for that. We had some fairly complicated passwords that we used, and we kept log sheets to manage those. Be careful to keep track of which log sheet goes with which machine and so on. That can definitely be a source of confusion. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Eugene. I sort of subbed for Alex as the team's coach for the trip, if you will. Just a couple of notes and observations from the competition. I think the primary or the biggest one was having an executable plan. The team that you heard talk here today had an executable plan. They planned in advance, and they were very diligent about what they were going to do, and that put them light years ahead of the other team. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to spend a lot of time on. The next item is knowing the rules. It's going to be absolutely critical that you know the rules of the competition. In the heat of battle, or the fog of war, if you will, some teams got in trouble for doing things that were against the rules, and it penalized them, it cost them points. So we'll see how that plays out, but know the rules of the competition. Third item is team cohesiveness is important. You're going to be locked with these guys in a room for 8 to 9 hours at a time, and in a hotel room. You need to get along with these guys. So build up your team, get to know everybody. It's going to be critically important as well. There were some other teams that had blow-ups or incidents where folks didn't get along, and I think it cost them in the long run. Fourth item here is operational security. Somebody else touched on this earlier, but know who's going in your room. Make sure that they're not red team. Red team's been known to try to get in a room and look at passwords or look at laptops and figure out what's going on. In terms of operational security, block out your windows. See if you can put pieces of paper up in the windows so people can't see in. You want to be able to protect that type of information. Keep that information confidential. Next item is advocate for your team. There are going to be instances where maybe the network's not working or they forgot to give you a computer or some supplies. Make sure that you work with the event coordinators so you can get that information and get that material so that your team can be productive and efficient. Again, advocate for your team. Next item is be professional in all of your interactions. This team was absolutely professional and they were commended for that. And I think it makes a difference in the end. And finally, the last item is have fun. It's a fun competition. You learn a lot and treat it as such. Once in a lifetime opportunity.